Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's part 2 class on two-point perspective studies. This is part 2. Last week we had part 1. So if you're just joining us tonight, feel free to stick around and take notes or just do your best, and then you can go back and watch part 1 from last week. And if you are even more lost with two-point perspective studies, we had one-point perspective studies last month that you can check out. And if you're feeling like you really need the basics, oh my goodness, I forgot to put my phone on Do Not Disturb. Hopefully nobody else calls me. It's across the room, so I'm just gonna leave it alone. Okay, so a year and a half ago, or even more, we had Intro to Linear Perspective, or it was Drawing 101. I can't recall the exact title, but our lovely moderator, Chanel, has the link to that class that she can drop in the chat, because I know there were some questions in part 1 of this class last week in reference to, just the absolute basics. And since we only have an hour in the class, I don't like to repeat too many things that have been in previous classes, if I can help it. So that class, all we did was take a square or a rectangle, just very basic 2-dimensional shapes, and turn them into 3-dimensional shapes in 1-point perspective, 2-point perspective, and 3-point perspective. So if you're feeling just really lost with the absolute basics of these concepts, then you can go back and check out those classes as well. Okay, so I'm going to switch to my tabletop view and go over supplies. And also just want to mention the classes that we have coming up. I said I'm going to switch, and then I was like, actually, I haven't mentioned the classes that are coming up. We've got some really fun classes over the next couple weeks. The first one is free next week, and we'll be using some vintage snapshots, some old photographs that I found in an antique shop, and we'll be just sketching those out in pen and ink. And then in the following class, in 2 weeks from tonight, it will be a premium class using Posca markers, and we'll be bringing those photographs to life using a very bold color palette using the Posca markers. And I can grab the example from that class, or if Chanel wants to drop the links to the classes that are coming up, you can see they're really vibrant and lovely, and I'm excited about that Posca class. So make sure you sign up for those and check those out. Okay, so we're continuing on tonight with two-point perspective studies. This was my original demo, and I'll flip to where we left off last week in just a moment. Don't forget to tag your work with the hashtags Make It With Michaels or Michaels Classes. And you can follow me on Instagram at Adrienne Hodge Art. And you can even tag me directly if you post anything from these Michaels classes on Instagram. I'd love to see them. Here's some of my older work using calligraphy ink on my business cards here. I'm also on Facebook, Adrienne Hodge Fine Art. And Chanel's also going to drop my link tree in the chat if you are interested in taking a private lesson with me, or if you're in the Austin area and want to take an in-person class with me. I'm going to be teaching at the Contemporary Austin Art School, the art museum located at Laguna Gloria here in Austin, Texas, which I'm very excited about. This summer I'll be doing drawing and painting classes there in person, and then I'm doing private lessons again right now, so I can do those on Zoom, and you can sign up for a 15-minute consultation to just discuss your goals that you have or supplies, or just ask any questions about private lessons, and then we can schedule a 60-minute session. You can do that directly through the links that you find in my link tree if you are interested. Okay, so we are just using pretty basic supplies tonight. We've got the Canson drawing pad here. That's stuck on my camera. Using some Staedtler pencils here. I've got this tin of 12 Staedtler pencils. I've got a synthetic eraser from Faber-Castell, all purchased at Michael's. I've got a Westcott ruler. And then we have the printouts that I provided for you for this series of linear perspective studies. So we have covered 1-point perspective. We're in the middle of 2-point perspective. And then we've got images in this packet of images that I provided that show 3-point perspective as well. And we'll be getting into those next month. In June, we'll cover 2-point perspective. Okay, so we left off with, it's going to be the last image here, or second to last. We left off with this image last week of this garage door in this alleyway. And we're going to see how far we can get with that. And then around the half-hour mark, I want to switch to this image because this one is still 2-point perspective, but it's from a different kind of angle where we're looking down at the street, and there's a lot of other interesting things going on here in 2-point perspective. So it'll be fun to break that one down the same way that we're breaking this other image down. Any questions before we get back to where we left off last week?
No questions so far.
Okay, cool. All right, so the main idea that I'm trying to get across in these studies here across the board in the 1-point perspective studies and now in the 2-point ones and then again in the 3-point is that this is a very challenging thing that discourages a lot of people in their drawing practice, and they will do a lot of things to try to ignore linear perspective. I've seen people edit out, entire houses in a landscape or objects out of a still life. I've seen people go to great lengths in my adult drawing and painting classes over the past decade to just take the linear perspective out. And it's because it is so challenging. So I wanted to make it approachable. I wanted to approach it in an approachable way and just basically show you how you can easily find the main ideas in a photograph and apply them to your drawing and maybe make some edits still to not complicate it too much. So we definitely are simplifying some things in these photographs, and also to just accept that the world is not going to cooperate with these kind of textbook examples of linear perspective that we tend to see in grade school or high school when it comes to, learning linear perspective. And I've taught middle school and high school previously. So sometimes the world just does not cooperate with that. There can be multiple vanishing points in one image, even though this main image in the 1-point perspective study that we did last month has, these main orthogonal lines going to this one vanishing point. There's another vanishing point that's happening here based on the separation and elevation because of the way this alleyway cuts down at an angle. And, that's just how it is. I was talking earlier with my partner about how when I traveled to Prague many years ago, how it felt like I was in an M.C. Escher drawing being in Prague because of the way that the architecture is on so many different, there's so many different elevations and there's so many different levels, and it almost breaks your brain a little bit to just walk around in Prague. I don't know if any of you have ever visited Prague. You can maybe tell me in the chat. But yeah, the world doesn't cooperate with our textbook examples. And so rather than just being like, oh, I'm just not going to draw this because it's too hard, there are ways to simplify it so that you don't feel overwhelmed. So the first thing that we did last week was we found our horizon line, and we did that by basically just tracing our orthogonal lines. And the orthogonal lines are the straight parallel lines traveling away from the viewer in a setting or in an image. So in this case, in a photograph, it's the viewer is the photographer. So the point of view or perspective of the photographer in the image, these lines are not slanted in real life. They just appear to slant and become diagonal lines. And but in reality, they are straight parallel lines. If we were facing them, they would be straight and parallel on the front of this garage. But since they're pointed away from us, towards this imaginary line, the horizon line that falls at the viewer's eye line, or in the case of a photograph, the photographer's eye line, and they converge at these imaginary points on the horizon. So in 1-point perspective, we're standing in the middle of something. So we've got one vanishing point. In 2-point perspective, we're looking either up or down at a geometric form. So the horizon line is pretty easy to spot if you know what you're looking for. It's just where these lines that are straight in reality appear straight in this photograph. And so it's right about there is where we discovered. And I had a bit of a time trying to find it in my demo last week, but once I found several lines that were straight, and I was a little confused of exactly where it was, but the way to confirm that I'd found it is that both of my vanishing points are falling on this same line. So that's how I know that I had it. And then once I have it, I transfer it over here to my drawing, and to simplify it, the easiest way, what we did was we just drew a box about the same size as the photo cutout or the printout that we taped down in our sketchbook. And I found kind of these coordinates in the photograph, like the top of the corner here and here, etc. And then I traced from there to find my vanishing points and started sketching these orthogonal lines. So I'm just going to pick up where we left off, and where we had ended last week was we were looking at the more complicated parts of this image, like right here where there's this protrusion of the building, this kind of awning that comes out right here. And well, this is not the last time we're going to talk about this, because when we get to 3-point perspective next month, I'm going to pull out this image and we'll see this awning again, because there it is again. This is that, but from a different angle. I'm standing in the same spot when I took these photographs, but I just pointed my camera up. So that's the same awning of that building. Okay, so the lines underneath here, even though they're on the right side of our corner, they are pointed in the direction of our first vanishing point. So we started to trace those to vanishing point 1. And so we'll just continue doing that now. So I'm just going to line up my ruler with my first vanishing point, which I put very inconveniently over there in the side of my spiral. Some of y'all in the audience had some really impressive sketches last week, where I like that you were doing your own thing, because sometimes you get a little rushed in these demos, and I like that I didn't see a bunch of other people doing the same thing I did with that one. So I'm just scooching it a little bit at a time, maybe like 1/4 of an inch each time. And I'm just keeping it lined up with vanishing point 1. And when we start to add value to this, we might end up shading that all in, and it might not even be noticeable that we drew these lines, but it's still good to go ahead and put them in there, because any practice that we're doing with this concept and idea is very helpful to our overall understanding of linear perspective. Okay, so let's talk about what's happening over here. We already talked about it, but we haven't drawn it yet. So over here on the other side of the garage, we've got this second garage door. And, you know, again, even though it's over here on the left side of our main corner here, the orthogonal lines there are pointed towards vanishing point 2. So we're going to line up our rulers with vanishing point 2 and do the same thing over here that we just did with the awning, and just scooch our ruler down a little bit each time. You could, for continuity's sake, we could line them up with the other lines on the garage door here, so they make like a little V every time with these lines, since that's what they do in the photograph. And finding your corners of things is a great way to, you know, kind of find your footing when you get lost in linear perspective. Like when we were trying to figure out, you know, where to put this awning over here, we started from this corner, right? So we're using these points right here, since they occur in a little inverted corner there. Now I've made it to my horizon line again, because those lines are straight. So now I'm going to start angling in the other direction. I think if I had counted, I probably put more little slats on this garage door than are actually there, but it's not the end of the world. All right. Now let's get this little corner ledge that's happening here. So I'm just gonna line up my ruler with my vanishing point 2 and just give it a little line right here that stops right about just a little bit past the corner there. And then I'll start from there and line that up with vanishing point 1, this little corner. And then I'm going to go here, because I'm going to go past. Oh, actually, it goes all the way to that little opposite edge. So we'll just go ahead and let it hit that other garage door right there. Okay, and then here's where this is just elevation. This hasn't, I mean, yeah, it does probably line up with well, let's see. Let's check it. See if where the asphalt on the driveway meets here. Okay, yeah, it does. For the most part, line up with vanishing point 1. Okay, so it comes, oh, hang on, I'm not on the screen. It comes down about ½ inch right here, and then this line does line up with vanishing point 1. So we'll just come down from our corner about, maybe not quite ½ inch, like that. And then we'll line that up with vanishing point 1, but we can be a little loose with that line. That line doesn't have to be perfect because it's a little uneven. So we'll kind of make it a little wavy and uneven here. And then someone put a little rock right there. If you want to draw the little rock, you can. I think I put it in my other drawing. The rock is also lined up with the linear perspective here. So I just basically drew in a little rectangular prism, kind of loose one, if you will, right there. Okay, and then from there, we want a little ledge to happen here. And this ledge is definitely going to be lined up with our vanishing point 2. So we'll just start from our vanishing point 2. And I'm just going to kind of eyeball it, honestly. And then we've got another straight vertical line, and I'm just going to freehand that. Feel free to use your ruler if you want. And I'm just going to freehand the other half of it too, but feel free to use your ruler. Okay, so I've got the little ledge of that, and then we've got the bottom of the wall. I am going to use my ruler for that one because it comes down at such an angle here. So we've got this straight vertical line. I'm just going to freehand some things. Feel free to use your ruler. We've got this little ledge. And then this, it's not really obvious, but there is kind of a straight line that comes down there. And then from here is what I'm gonna use that. Confused about where to. Okay, right. All right. I'm glad I busted out the ruler. This is that weird moment that's caused by the elevation. Remember, the alley is on its own kind of path here. So the bottom, where the alley meets the bottom of this building, if you recall, we talked about this when we were studying the 1-point perspective version of this scene. And I just pulled it out a moment ago and showed you how the bottom of the building and the alley it's following a different elevational path. Like this line does not intersect with our vanishing point 2 because of, you know, just the elevation of the alley. So we're just going to freehand this line, or we can just look at like the shape that it makes of the photograph, how it makes this elongated triangle here. That up onto the camera. So it makes this elongated triangle. So I can just go to my sketch here and just get an elongated triangle going right there, because it's not going to line up with vanishing point 2. Hopefully I didn't confuse anyone too badly with that. Okay, so now we're just down to the value in the image. We could take our ruler and keep drawing orthogonal lines right here, but I'm not going to worry about it. They all line up with vanishing point 1. And I want to get to that other image, and we're closing in on the half-hour mark when I wanted to do that. So I'm just going to take a heavier B pencil here, and I'm going to look at the value that I see in this photograph. If you want to do this, you can also do this. I'm going to take my eraser and erase my orthogonal lines that are, in my drawing that I don't need anymore. You could even erase all of this, your vanishing points if you wanted, because we don't really need them anymore. And if you do need them, I'm sure if you're like me, you drew that dot dark enough on the paper that you could still find it again if you needed to. Okay, so value refers to the dark and light that we see in an image. So we've got the value scale from 0 to 10, 10 being the absolute dark, and 0 being the absolute white highlights. So that would be like the light that's coming out of these lights. That would be our 0 on the value scale here. And then we don't really see a whole lot else that is that white other than the rock maybe. And then some highlights on the edge of the slats on the garage door. We don't have a whole lot of absolute black shadows either, so we can fill those in pretty easily. We've got like a pretty dark shadow at the bottom of our garage door. We've got this stained moment underneath our lip here, but the value is how we're going to really tell the story of the 3 dimensions that are happening here. It definitely feels 3-dimensional now, but getting the value in is going to really, bring it home. But the value is also following the rules of linear perspective. Like these little water stains on the building, they are kind of straight vertical lines here, right, in 2-point perspective. But then the ones here on top, they are following the same orthogonal path as these other lines that we drew to our vanishing point. So as we put them in to make that feel 3-dimensional right there, and you can use your ruler if you need to for this, but I'm just gonna go all the way down the line and just kind of keep my eyes lined up with what these lines are doing and get that going like that. So just drawing those in that directional path, and then we could even go this direction and make them kind of cross-hatching lines. And then that just sends that message even more that we're looking at a 3-dimensional surface there. And I talked about that in the intro to linear perspective classes, those ones where all we did was draw a box and turn it into a cube. So if that, is a little over your head, you can go check out those classes from last year, because I did that in a very simplified way with those. Okay, and then we've got this kind of darker, maybe like there was a puddle recently on this asphalt driveway, so we can kind of sketch our little shape of that in there. And then we can sketch in the shape of some of these leaves that we're seeing on top of them. And then I'm going to use kind of a little scribbling moment here. And I'm using a 7B pencil, by the way. I think I showed it, but I didn't say it. But even the value that I'm adding here, I'm still following the contours of the surface here, which is the driveway, and it follows the same path as this line, right? So I'm just making my value follow the same path as those orthogonal lines that would be traveling to the vanishing point. So the moral of the story here is if you try to edit linear perspective out of a landscape, it's harder than you think because even the puddle on the ground in the driveway is following the linear perspective in the image. It's really hard to get away from it completely. Trees going down the street are following the same orthogonal path as the lines in the street. And then for our lighter values, I'm just letting up on my pencil and doing that same kind of scribbly action. Another way we can drive the idea of depth home in this photograph is to pay attention to the leaves. The leaves that are closer to us are going to be a little bigger. We can see the shape of them in a little more detail, and then the leaves that are farther away from us are going to be smaller and smaller, and maybe the ones that are back here are just like little stippling dots. So the way that you're even sketching the leaves is telling the viewer how far away they are from them. And then same idea, this puddle or wet spot on the alley, even though the alley's on its own trajectory here, it's still following the same path as the side of the alley. So as I'm filling in those shadows, I'm following that. Vertical lines in 1 and 2 point perspective do not change, even though we talked about how this is technically doing a tiny bit of a 3 point perspective thing here. We edited and made these vertical lines straight in our drawing. So, oh, I just realized I don't need these lines either. And we also don't need these lines, but we do need that vertical line. So things on the side of the building here, outside of our garage door, are going to follow the same vertical path. Oh, I forgot this line. This kind of seam in the architecture here. But there's like some water stains coming down the side of the building here. Those sorts of things. We can sketch those in nice and vertical, or just however you're seeing them in the photograph. And then just the same idea as we did down here on the ground. We're just going to add, if we wanted to add some value to like the awning, we're going to make sure that we're adding that value in a way that follows the orthogonal path of the linear perspective lines, of the orthogonal lines, sorry. All right, any questions about this image before I move on to that other one? Okay, well, so I want to look at this image now, and I don't think I'm going to tape it down and all that. I think I'm just going to go
Hey,
for
Adrian.
it. Oh, yes.
Sorry, we did get a last minute question. Can you explain orthogonal lines?
Yes. Okay, so let me find one of my photographs where we're looking at something head on. It's the one thing I didn't do when I was out taking these photographs and compiling these photographs is I didn't take a picture. I should have turned and taken a picture of this garage door facing it. But I have this photograph and this building we're facing, and that's the best I can do. Okay, so when we're facing this building right here, we've got the tops of the windows and the bottoms of the windows, etc., right? Those lines are facing the viewer or the photographer, which is me. in this photograph. And so they appear the way they actually are in reality. They are straight parallel lines. They do not intersect, right? The building, this building right here that we're about to look at, if I were facing the side of this building, then these lines would be straight and vertical and not intersect, right? When we look at that photograph that's in 3-point perspective, nobody looks up at a skyscraper like this and thinks, wow, that building's getting smaller at the top, right? Like the first floor is really wide, but then, you know, like the building doesn't narrow as it gets up there. And it's kind of a common understanding that this is an optical illusion that's occurring, right? So these lines that become diagonal lines in linear perspective, they are also, it's an optical illusion. So we call these lines orthogonal lines. Any line that appears to become a diagonal line because of perspective, because of the distance from the viewer and the fact that it is traveling away from the viewer. We're not facing it, it's traveling away from us. So these lines, we call them orthogonal lines. They are the lines that appear to converge on the horizon line at these vanishing points. Hopefully that clears it up. So it's just the term for the lines that appear to be diagonal in linear perspective. Okay, so let's look at this image and let's find our horizon line first. So who can just tell me by looking at this photograph where the horizon line is? Where do those orthogonal lines appear straight? I'm going to turn on my chat preview for just a second so I can see, or open the chat so I can see if I get any answers. Okay, top of the building. Yes, exactly. At the top of the building and the city skyline. So in this case, it does line up with the what am I trying to say? The physical, the horizon line where the land meets the sky. It's not always there. Some people just assume that the landscape horizon, or, where the land meets the sky, is the horizon line in linear perspective or in an image showing linear perspective. That's not always the case. And in the, in a lot of these examples, or in the examples when we first talked about linear perspective a year and a half ago, we talked about that as well, that just the fact that it's not, you can have a horizon line like where the land meets the sky, and then you can have your linear perspective horizon can be different because that's the eye line of the viewer. But I took this photograph from the 21st floor of another building, and yeah, it's right about here. It's at the top of the building, and it is very much in line with the horizon where the land meets the sky, that line. Okay, so we've got the horizon line right here. I'm just going to draw it directly on the photograph. Also, I realize I'm starting a little later on this, but we had a question that took up some time, so we'll get as far as we can with this one. All right, and then I'm just going to use the street that has become an orthogonal line, and the street's a great example. We know that the street does not become more narrow as it goes down the line, right? It's just an optical illusion. Cars don't get smaller as they go away from us. All of these things are just optical illusions. So, but this orthogonal line of the edge of the street very obviously hits my horizon line right here. And I'm willing to bet a lot of the other orthogonal lines in our image are also going to line up there. But I'm going to double check that in just a minute. First, I'm going to go ahead and find our vanishing point 2. So this is VP1. And then let's find vanishing point 2. I'm going to just use the other side of, well, I guess I could just be really obvious and just use this one. Okay, so it's going to go off the page a little bit. I was trying not to do the thing where I have to tape it down in my sketchbook, but I think I have to do it again anyway. I'm going to go this way with it because it's kind of far. It's a little farther than vanishing point 1. Also, this is kind of a next level observation here, but I know several of you, judging by your sketches last week, will be able to stay with me on this idea, and I think it will be really helpful to say. When you're looking at 2-point perspective in the world, like when we drew our box in 2-point perspective back a year and a half ago, when I just took a simple, square and turned it into a cube, I, put the vanishing points kind of close together on the page. Because of just our peripheral vision and the way our eyes work, our eyes can only focus on one point at a time, and that is just pure neuroscience, and you can look it up. It's why you shouldn't text when you're driving in your car, and our eyes can only focus on one point at a time in a visual frame. So when you're looking at a corner of something like this, one of your vanishing points is going to be pretty close to your center, plane of vision, or your kind of where your focal point is. And the other vanishing point is usually going to be kind of far away in your peripheral vision. And that's just because of the way our eyes work. We just can't, focus on these 2 points and have them be both that close to us. Another really interesting thought in all of this to think about is, how human beings are predators, right? And for the most part, unless you're vegan or vegetarian, we evolved as carnivores and as hunters, and to give our prey an advantage, our eyesight is very limited. But think about any animal that is a prey. They've got much more wider frame of vision than we do. They have eyes on either side of their heads. Like a cow has eyes on either side of its head. And you can kind of just look across the board at the animal kingdom and think, is this a prey or a predator? And an animal of prey or an animal that's a predator. And if the eyes are in front, it's most likely a predator, because we are limited. All right, so our second vanishing point is way over here. It is right there. Okay, so, and we can, trace all these lines if we need to. If you need to confirm that that's where it is, you can trace some more orthogonal lines. And probably the areas where your eyes might be saying, no way, would be over here in all these complicated moments. And then if you trace the lines, it will confirm, yes, way, that depending on whatever side of the corner of the building, so we've got our straight vertical lines at the corner of the building, and on this side, you've got a line that's lined up with vanishing point 1. And on this side, you've got a line that's lined up with vanishing point 2. So it's going to stand up across the board here for for pretty much everything in this image. So the street, the tops of these buildings. Okay, so let's start sketching this in our sketchbook. I'm gonna go horizontally here this time, since our vanishing point is so far away. And I'm not going to really worry about the, you know, sketching the box and all that. I just want to get as far as I can with this image. So I'm just going to draw my horizon line, and we need it to go the length of the paper because it went the length of the paper there a second ago. Okay, and then I'm just going to arbitrarily, here, let me see if I can get that more lined up on camera. Okay, I'm going to put vanishing point 1 right here. And I'm going to put vanishing point 2 way over here because that's as far as I can go on the page, right? And then I'm going to put the corner of my building about like a third of the way along that line over here. I think that's a good spot for it. And it goes a little bit above the horizon line. There is a little tiny bit of that building that goes above the horizon line. Okay, and then we've got another corner just to make this image so complicated. We've got another corner on the building. And that one, the top of that other corner is about right in line with the horizon. So I'm going to stop right there. Right. And then I'll do the side of the building. Maybe just the width of the ruler going this way, right about here. Okay, and then the other side of the building goes off my visual plane here. So in the photograph, I'll just go ahead and close it up there. All right, so I got 4 lines. Okay, so here's my original corner. This is this corner. Looking at this corner right here, and I'm going to find the top of the building from that corner. So I'm lining up with vanishing point 1 and drawing down to meet the other corner. We're just looking at the part of the building that goes above the horizon because the whole building, you know, it stops right here. I guess this is like the penthouse suite floor or something. Or maybe it's storage, who knows? We don't know that it's a penthouse suite. Maybe it's the attic. But it goes up higher than the rest of the building over here. So we need a straight vertical line where that one stops. Although it stops, not quite. Stops right about here. Okay, and then we've got our other corner. Let's not worry about that other corner just yet. Let's go ahead and sketch the rest of this. I think this is like the parking garage, but it goes a little bit higher as well. And I guess it has a corner, but it's kind of hard to tell where that corner is. I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. I'm just going to freehand it. You feel free to get your ruler out on that image and make it more exact, but I'm just going to freehand it and do something like that. Because I want to get to these roads and stuff. Oh my goodness, we got 9 minutes left. All right, so we don't have enough time to get to every part of this building, to all the windows. The windows are kind of uniform. It's these, you know, what would be horizontal straight kind of stripes that go down, and the windows kind of blend in with these, you know, alternating gray and black stripes going down the side of the building. So we could spend a lot of time sketching these, but the main idea is that above our horizon line, the angle of these stripes, we'll call them, is angling up, and then below the horizon. So I'm just going to kind of sketch in some orthogonal lines here. They're going to angle down. And then on the other side of our corner, they are going to travel towards vanishing point 2. And the angle of them is going to switch above the horizon. But then we've got this crazy moment right here where we've got another little corner. It's kind of hard to see, but right here there's another little indentation happening. So it's actually, this is where that comes in. So it's like right here, there's a little corner that's doing the same thing that our garage and the other one is doing. It switches on us. So this one, these are facing vanishing point 1. Okay, and then on the other side of the corner of this other corner, they're traveling to vanishing point 2. So it just, that little bit of information shift makes a huge difference, and you see how, you know, this building is shaped, and then it's more noticeable after we point that out, how those are switching. Okay, I want to talk about the street a little bit. So we can use, you know, anything else in the photograph to help us find where the street's going to go. Like you could use this vertical line of the side of the building and sketch that in first, or you could use just the placement of it at the edge of the frame right here. Like, you know, find a little shape there to weight you down. I'm just going to go kind of by the distance from the side of the building here. So let's say about there. We'll find a little point, and then I'll line that up with vanishing point 1. And I realized, kind of going off the side of my page here. I'm going to go to my other example just because I know I sketched it all in one space here. Okay, so this was vanishing point 1 here. Let me just darken up all these lines from my other demo. They somehow got rubbed off in my sketchbook. Okay, so there's the side of the building, and then this is the top of one of the other buildings right next to it that I used to help me find where the road is. So there it is right there. And then I need the other side of the road. Okay, and then once I have the road in there, I can sketch in things like the tree line, these trees over here, more organic things, and that can maybe start to help me find my footing in an image like this. But we are just plain almost out of time, y'all. I wanted to get as far as I could with this one, and I think we got far enough that you could probably keep going on your own and keep sketching it. Okay, so that is it for for 2-point perspective studies here, and we'll come back to these ideas again when we get to 3-point perspective next month. We're going to take a little mental break and do something that mostly with these landscape photos in the next couple of weeks, and you know, playing with those Posca markers. And we'll mostly just be exploring ideas of atmospheric perspective, and I'll talk about that more when we get into the class next week. And we've had lots of classes on atmospheric perspective up until now that I can refer back to if you need help with those ideas. But I'd love to see your studies from tonight, and hopefully you're going to go do something that's like a total mental break after this, because I know it's a lot. I recommend after drawing anything in linear perspective to just draw like the most organic thing you can find. Like, oh my goodness, look at that house. Yeah, go draw some flowers or some leaves or something very organic, or, you know, a cotton ball would be a nice mental break. That is absolutely gorgeous. This is not your first linear perspective rodeo. I am so impressed. Wow. And look at the wood slats on the side of that building and the bricks on the wall. I am so impressed. I love it. Thank you for sharing. I love a page of notes to go with it. Oh yeah, look at that. Very nice. Get your gorgeous nails too. Yeah, and you got the leaves in there and some value on those leaves. It's all really coming along. All right, yes. Well, man, when I see these wonderful examples, that really makes me feel like I did my job, because y'all are totally getting it. Yes, okay, that's the building we were just talking about, it looks like. Just need that little hidden corner that was throwing us off. That one looked really good too. It disappeared, but I could see all those perfect orthogonal lines. Looks like the background might be blurred, so we can't see that one. Very nice. Again. Oh, I love the stylized qualities of your line. Your line quality is really nice. I love how you got the, like, I really just feel the depth of that driveway happening there.
That's the last one.
Okay. Thank you all so much for sharing. This was wonderful, and you did a great job. And even if you didn't share and you feel like you still need some more practice, don't be hard on yourself, because this takes a lot of practice to get straight. And yeah, next week we'll be doing some atmospheric perspective, so there won't be any geometric forms. We're gonna be looking at some really fun vintage snapshots of like an ocean and, you know, canyon and some fields and valleys. There will be a little bit of like there's a river in one of them. That's the most linear perspective that we'll have in those images. So nice mental break for us, but still talking about perspective. So yeah, hopefully I'll see you all again next week for that free class. Thank you so much and have a wonderful evening. Good night.